I think it's fair to say that the Portland Trailblazers definitely had a disappointing season, because coming to this year, the Portland Trailblazers had made a lot of roster changes, and many people had them as one of the winners for the offseason. And many people thought they could be a top 5 seed in the Western Conference, and they didn't finish the year off too far from that, as they were the 6th seed in the conference, and this was with them missing a lot of key players for multiple games. And going into the first round, they were fully healthy, and they had to face the Denver Nuggets. That was a team missing their second best player in Jamal Murray, along with a bunch of other role players. And I kept wondering what would happen to the Portland Trailblazers if they actually lost to this depleted Denver Nuggets team, because I thought they would win this game in this series in 6 games, but Denver would actually lose to this depleted Denver Nuggets team in 6 games. So now we have to look onto the future for this team and just their offseason in general. And I think the Blazers are going to be one of the more active teams in the offseason this offseason. So in today's video, I'll be naming some things that I believe the Portland Trailblazers should do this offseason. Before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video, as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel because I literally post NBA content every single day. You could check, I do. Also, if you could help me reach my goal of 1,500 subscribers, that would be really appreciated. Comment on this video, start a conversation with me, because I do respond to all of my comments, and play that intro. The first thing I think the Portland Trailblazers should do this offseason is something that I don't think is an unrealistic option for them, and in some ways it could be smart, because I think they should maybe trade their franchise player in Damian Lillard. And I know some Blazers fans aren't going to want to hear that, since Lillard might just be their greatest player in franchise history. But you have to realize that him getting traded or him requesting a trade isn't too unbelievable, because in that series versus Denver, Dame was playing absolutely fantastic, but he wasn't getting enough help. And for all these years, the Blazers haven't put enough help around Dame to actually get the job done and even go to the NBA Finals. I believe his team has already peaked, because when they made the Western Conference Finals a few years ago, I thought they would have maybe made the NBA Finals. If they didn't make it that year, I don't think they're ever going to make it again. And in my opinion, Damian Lillard should honestly request a trade, because he spent so much years in Portland and he's had so much moments where he could have left, yet he decided to stay, and his team simply hasn't been as successful as it should be, and it's not his fault at all. And if they were going to trade Dame, I think they would be trading him to a title contender, because I don't think the Blazers front office will trade him to a trash team, because their organization has to have a lot of respect for him. And some teams that I could see Damian Lillard going to is maybe the LA Lakers, but I don't really see how a move between them would happen, because their best asset would be Taylor Horton-Tucker, and I don't think he's a big enough piece to trade for a superstar like Damian Lillard. Maybe there's a chance Dame could get traded to the Dallas Mavericks, and in return they can get Kristaps Porzingis and hope that he becomes an all-star, along with multiple first-round picks, of course. Maybe even the Knicks can make a move for Damian Lillard, and a move like that would probably include RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Mitchell Robinson, along with another big contract and some first-round picks. And I think the Knicks could actually put up a really strong offer for him. Maybe the Miami Heat could trade for Dame if they offer Tyler Hero, Precious Achiuwa, Duncan Robinson in a sign and trade, along with multiple first-round picks and probably some salary fillers to make the money work. Maybe that could get them in a move with Damian Lillard. Obviously, these moves aren't going to happen exactly like that, but those are some teams that I think Dame could go to. And I think they could get a really good return for him. And if they're not going to get a good return for him, I don't think they should make a trade and trade him. And I do understand the angle of that. Portland probably won't get another superstar caliber player like Dame, and that they should still try and rebuild around him. But I honestly understand that point of view. I don't think they should keep him, because they're honestly just wasting his career, and their current roster is going to be lucky to even make it to the conference finals. They're not making the NBA Finals, and they're not winning a championship anytime soon. So I think trading Dame will be better for the team in the long run, and for Damian Lillard's career in the long run. The second thing I think the Portland Trailblazers should consider this offseason is maybe trading CJ McCollum. And it isn't because CJ's a bad player or anything like that. It's simply because it's been proven that a duo of him and Damian Lillard won't work, due to the fact that they're both below average defenders, and teams will constantly exploit that. And if they traded CJ, they could potentially get a player who's a better defender and he could still be a good fit, or they could get a bunch of good role players. And a team like Portland could really use that because their depth isn't that good. And all I'm going to say is that if the Blazers plan on keeping Damian Lillard over the offseason or he doesn't request a trade, CJ McCollum definitely has to go because there's no way they can run it back with this roster that was playing terrible and disappointing. I think some teams they should look into like moving CJ to maybe the LA Lakers, and in return they could get Taylor Warren Tucker, Montrezl Harrell, Kyle Kuzma, and maybe a sign and trade with Dennis Schroeder along with second round picks or something. Maybe they could look into sending him to the Dallas Mavericks in return for Kristaps Porzingis. I think that's actually a move that could really happen, and I would hope that Kristaps could play better in a new environment. Maybe they could look into sending him to the New York Knicks, and in return they could look to get Emmanuel Quickley, Mitchell Robinson, and some first round picks. To be honest, I don't know a specific trade they should make with what team or anything like that. All I know is that if they're going to keep Damian Lillard, this backcourt cannot be together into next season if they want to win a championship, because it simply has proven that it's not going to work. The third thing the Portland Trailblazers need to do going into this offseason is to get a good and new head coach, because recently they just parted way with their head coach in Terry Stotts, who was one of the worst coaches in the NBA. And it was a big reason why Portland was so disappointing and why Portland lost to the Nuggets. And this was due to the fact that on offense, the Blazers were pretty good. I have to give them credit for that. But the way they played offense wasn't something that was going to translate to the playoffs, since a lot of their offense came off one-on-one play. It was mainly just give Dame or CJ the ball and hope for the best. And it was basically just their talent along with some good shooters and decent offensive players that made them so good on the offense, at least in the regular season. But on the other side of the floor, the Blazers were absolutely horrible, as they were the second worst defensive team in the whole NBA. And although this Portland team doesn't have the best defensive personnel, I don't think they're so bad to the point where they're the second worst in the whole entire league. And it just shows that the coaching isn't fantastic, and it should be, and it needs to be fixed. There has been some rumors that they're looking to get that Mike D'Antoni as their new head coach. I think that's a terrible idea, since although he would help this team out on offense, because I think his style of play would make Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum look way better than they actually are, I still think his offense is very predictable to a certain degree and wouldn't work as well in the playoffs. Also, he's a terrible defensive head coach, and that's what the Blazers really need, so I don't think it would work that well. But he would be way better than Terry Stotts, but that's not that high of a bar. I think they should maybe looking to get like a guy like Kenny Atkinson if they're going to rebuild, and if they're going to try and compete, maybe they should look at Dave Yeager, who did a really good job with the Sacramento Kings a few years ago. Or maybe they could look into getting Steve Clifford, who's a coach who helps his teams not make little mistakes. For example, he like reduces the team's turnovers and makes them very disciplined on defense and things like that. So I think those two are very good options. Or they could go the assistant coach route and look at an assistant coach or something like that. But whether or not they keep Dame, they definitely need to get the right head coach, because over the last few years they haven't had a good one. The fourth and final thing that I think the Portland Trailblazers need to do this offseason is something that I think they need to do if they're going to have a competitive team still. And that is to sign better defenders on this team, because you're simply not going to go far in the NBA if you're as bad as Portland was on defense this season. They literally have more below average defenders on their team playing significant minutes than they do have guys who are above average defenders. And you're not going to win anything like that. And in this year's NBA season, Portland was literally the second worst defense in the NBA. Absolutely terrible. And in this year's free agency, there's a lot of guys on the market who are solid defenders. Guys like Josh Richardson's going to be a free agent. Tony Snell's a solid perimeter defender. He's a free agent. Avery Bradley's going to be a cheap and solid defender. Stanley Johnson's actually a really good defender. He just doesn't get that much minutes on the Raptors. They should probably bring back Darren Jones Jr. because he's a pretty good perimeter defender. Nerlens Noel is a really good backup center, especially on the defensive side of the floor. Elfrid Payton was a pretty good defender this season. Garrett Temple's a pretty solid defender. Maurice Harkless can maybe be a solid defender at this point in his career, but I think they should maybe consider bringing him back. He's pretty cheap. Or maybe they could even bring back Wesley Matthews, because he's a guy who always tries hard on defense. So as I just showed, there are plenty of guys who are solid defenders that are going to be available on the free agent market, and a lot of these guys could help their defense out a lot, and they're not even going to cost that much money. And I think it could make them a better team. I don't think it's going to make them title contenders or anything like that, but it could definitely make them better. But to conclude the video, I still think Portland is a pretty solid team, but I don't think they're title contenders. And if I was an NBA fan, I wouldn't want to see Damian Lillard waste the rest of his career on the Portland Trailblazers, who was an average team, because I think he's too great of a talent to be wasting his career on a title contender. I think trading him in the long run will look better for this Blazers team, and it will just be better for Damian Lillard's career. And if you're a Blazers fan, you should probably want Dame to leave if you care about his career. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Let me know what you think the Blazers should do this offseason. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content. And touch my goal of 1,500 subscribers. Comment on this video, start a conversation, as I do respond to all of my comments. And I'm out.